is Oluwatobiloba Sanwo. I am an analyst for Nextier Advisory. It is my pleasure on behalf of Nextier Power to welcome you to this dialogue. The theme of this dialogue is transmission, discourse, the past, the present, and the future. Transmission is one of the most important aspects of power delivery, and in the Nigerian sector, it is key to ensuring current, constant power supply, which is one of the premises of the current government. We hope that at this power dialogue we can set a safe scene for all participants to honestly and openly discuss and give their opinions on what they think should be done and how to shape the future, the present, and also with learning lessons from the past. Allow me to introduce the moderator for today, Mr. Dozier Opala-Obieri. Dozier is an attorney and an economist. He's currently a senior legal advisor on the Power Africa program in Nigeria. He recently served as a special assistant on energy to the Nigeria former coordinating minister for the economy, the Minister of Finance. Prior to that, he worked at the African Center for Economic Transformation, where he was an advisor on extractive sector policy and legal issues. Dozier has experience working with governments in Ghana, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Mozambique. He holds a law and economics degree from Northwestern University School of Law and Brandeis University, respectively. Thank you.
The saying goes that you can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So the idea is learning from past experience, looking at the way the transmission sector looks like today, and what the sector holds for us in the future. We have three interesting panelists with us today, and I don't think they need much of an introduction, but we have just real quick, probably should give them, first of all, let me first of all tell you how this is going to go. Each of the panelists will speak for about 10 minutes, give us their opening remarks, and then we'll then get into the actual discussion for the evening. Our first panelist for the evening is Mr. Eugene Mohammed, who's the MD, CEO of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. He currently will be speaking on the old versus the new TCN, and should give us some interesting perspective on that. We also have, sitting on my far left, Mr. Ifeoluwa Oyedele, who's the Executive Director at NDPHC, Engineering and Technical Services, and you're welcome. Last but not the least, from the International Finance Corporation, which is an arm of the World Bank, Principal Investment Officer, Femi Akinremiyo. I'd like to welcome you. So, sir, would you please start us off by giving us your opening remarks? Each opening remark will be about 10 minutes. You can use the podium. With 10 minutes in order to allow us to keep to time, because this event will close at exactly 8 o'clock.
I'm happy to be here. Let me give you briefly Transmission Company of Nigeria. I came in as the interim managing director in February 2017. So in a few days, I'm going to be exactly 1 year in Transmission Company of Nigeria. Now, when we talk about Transmission Company of Nigeria, it is a company that hitherto before, I also want to inform you that I'm one of the people who work on the power sector reform. So most of the things that were done in the power sector reform, I was part of it. And some of the studies that we did to prepare TCN for the reform, I can vividly remember them. For example, one of the studies we did was what we called change management consultancy, which was done by Red Electrica in 2005. That change management was to prepare TCN for the role to play in the private setting, where most of the players are going to be private sector. That study is to look at the management structure, the staffing, and the process. Three key findings was revealed by that study, and one of the findings was that TCN had the aging workforce. TCN also had, TCN had also too many non-technical staff, and thirdly, TCN was top-heavy. Now, at that time, when they said TCN was top-heavy, TCN had 10 general managers and 11 assistant general managers. Engineer Sabo is here, he can confirm. We had 6 general managers in the regional level. We have 1 GMNCC and then 2 general managers in transmission, general manager engineering and general manager transmission, and 1 general manager in system operation, which is called general manager operation. Now, at that time, it was said it was top heavy by that study. What I want to tell you is that when we took over in February, TCN has changed from 10 general managers to 46 general managers, and from 11 general managers to 134 assistant general managers, instead of 11, 134. So that is the organization we took over. So one of the mandates that we had was to prepare TCN, to come up with an organizational chart that is responsible and is reliable. And I want to tell you that we have delivered that by December. We are yet to still receive government approval, but we have delivered it. And we have reduced the number of general managers from 46 to 16, and assistant general managers from 134 to less than 50. The way we want to implement it is that nobody is going to lose his job. Everybody that is there will keep his job. But if your position is not one of those that have been approved, then when you leave, that position is not going to be filled. And the fact that TCN had the aging workforce, we have looked at it and we see that between 2 to 3 years, the place will level, and that means the 16 general managers will be in place. Another thing that I also want to tell you is that when we took over, the grid was very, very unstable. We have implemented few things in place that has, to some extent, stabilized the grid. There are some things that still need to be done. One of the things that we're able to successfully implement is the frequency control, which is a requirement of the grid code, but the generators have not been providing. Madam Joy is here. I had a lot of battle with her before we implement that. We are actually working on implementing. We have achieved 49.5 to 50.5 for more than 90% of the time. We are working to move to 49.75 to 50.25. This is what we want to implement this year. We have also been able to look at how do we raise investment. Because transmission to stabilize the grid, you need about 3 or 4 things. One, you need to have investment in critical infrastructure. There are certain lines that we need to reinforce, and we need to build new lines to stabilize the grid. Then we also need to have a functional SCADA, which, as we speak with you, we don't have a completely functional SCADA, because the SCADA can see less than 40% of the grid, and it's also characterized by a lot of deficiencies. Then we need to have the spinning reserve. Spinning reserve, we have looked at what was the problem, and we have done some recommendation to that. We are waiting for them to approve. The next thing, we have to have the frequency control, which I told you we have been able to achieve. Now, for us to have investment to expand the grid and provide what we call redundancy that is required internationally, at least the least standard is that we should have N-1. Now, let me explain to you what is N-1. You remember around February when I came in, there was a breakdown. One of our substation transformer got spoiled in Abuja. That is Katape. You remember that time we had a serious problem in Abuja because we have inadequate supply. So we don't have N-1 in Abuja at that time. That's what it means. Now, if you compare this with what happened in Jos, when we had 150 MBA got bonds, you remember that thing happened. In Jos, anybody who is in Jos will tell you that nothing happened to their supply because we had N-1 standard in Jos. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is that what we have been able in the last 1 year is that we have established investment plan with the financing support from multilateral donors to put N-1 redundancy all over the country. And that is the amount of money that we got with the support of my colleague. One of them is here who worked very tirelessly at that time to get that money. Engineer Mr. Soni Roche is here. We worked very tirelessly and we are able to raise this money. But before we raise the money, we have to discuss with the donors what are the issues. Because TCN have issues. In fact, there's a write-up by the World Bank that indicated TCN capacity to implement project is not more than $100 million in a year. Now, if an organization had only $100 million, organization like TCN had only $100 million in a year, it means the capacity will never be expanded because the equipment that will fail in a year will be up to $100 million. So we have to review what are the problems with TCN in terms of implementation of project. The multilateral donor project one of the weaknesses is that TCN management don't normally provide oversight over implementation of multilateral donor projects. Another issue that we discovered is that implementation of project is over-centralized in Abuja. So everything is centralized here. So the regional offices are not carried alone, who are very close to the customer, who understand all the issues, are not carried alone. The next problem we discovered is that is the issue of procurement. Now, what are the issues of procurement? We normally have people, we have contractors with low capacity. And how did this come up? We discovered that most of the original equipment manufacturers abroad, they are interested in supplying equipment to Nigeria, but they are not interested in participating in the implementation of projects inside Nigeria because of so many of the bad news that come outside Nigeria. So what they do, they enter into contract with some local people. Whether those local people have capacity does not matter. So they enter into that agreement, and then they get their payment on LC. And the local parties are supposed to do the installation. Most of the time, the equipment are shipped in the port, and the local party could not even clear the equipment. And that is why TCN had the highest number of stranded containers in the port. I think the last count, we have 758, 59 containers in the port. We have actually cleared about 550 in the last 1 year that I'm here, but we still have 159 containers that are in the port. So this is the result. So one of the things that we had to do is that we need to come up with a structure that will adequately address the risk associated with all parties that are involved in the implementation of projects. And that's why sometimes people are complaining that we have raised the qualification criteria. The reason is that any equipment manufacturer that is interested in doing business in Nigeria, they have to also be party to the installation, so that the risk does not just leave them with the shipment of the goods. Now, these are some of the things that we have done. Now, I can happily tell you that we are putting a structure that we are working to implement our project that will put in at least 20,000 megawatts of transformer wheeling capacity of TCN in the next 3 to 4 years. This is real, it's not a joke. And some of those people who are very close to us, they know in implementing projects we don't play, we are working very hard. Even the Nextier project that is implemented by the World Bank, which has spent about 8 years with only about 50% disbursement rate. We have jacked it up, it's almost about 80% disbursement rate now, and most of the transformers we can tell you when we are going to finish them. So in a nutshell, this is the background I want to give you, but I want to tell you that we have a plan of making TCN to play its role in the power sector the way it's supposed to be. And that is why anybody will agree now that we are not the weakest link in the power sector. But we are not there. We need to put in all the necessary redundancy. Because with a generation capacity of 7,000 megawatts, transmission is supposed to be 14,000. If you look at the power, the power pyramid, it's supposed to be 14,000. Distribution is supposed to be 28,000. So if we are 7,000 and generation is 7,000, you know we are not there because we don't have all the required redundancy. So in the nutshell, let me stop here and wait for next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly, Dan has, you've given us a number of facts and also provided some information that will generate additional questions. I almost want to, somewhere in the middle of your presentation, I almost wanted to pack up and go home because it seems like you've answered a number of the questions I have here. But I know that there are plenty of questions out there and we still have to hear from our other panelists. So can I invite Mr. Ifelua Oyedele from the NDPHC to give us his perspective?
I'm sure that you all know that we're just here to support our brother, the MD of TCN. You know, when I found out that electricity was first generated in Nigeria in the year 1896, just about 10 to 15 years after Britain had electricity, with all their development and all of the history behind them, it really saddens me. My heart bleeds because the gap between us and Britain today is no longer 15 years, it's probably a century. And some of the problems that we have are man-made because this discourse is about the past, the present, and the future. Some of the problems are man-made. What I discovered was that we were not planning ahead. Most other nations plan 50 years ahead, 100 years ahead. But what happened was that when we build a generation station, we will overload it before we start building another one. Whereas in other economy, when it is exactly 50% filled up, they go on to build the next generation station. And that has been the problem. That's why the MD of TCN said the capacity, the willing capacity of TCN should actually be 2.5 times what the generation capacity is. And here we are today, where the ones, I mean, where the generation companies are waiting for us to be able to wheel out what they can generate. If you are like me, you won't even know what NDPT is, because until I got to NDPT, I didn't have an idea of a company called NDPT. Most of you know NIPP. NDPT is a federal, it's a private limited liability company owned by the federal government, the 36 states of the federation, and the Federal Capital Territory, as well as the 774 local governments, plus all the other ones that have been created by the various governments in Nigeria. And usually, for those of us who are, if you are an illiterate like me, you wonder why do we build our generation stations in certain parts of the country and not in other parts of the country. There are two methods of building these things. You either build them where the primary sources of energies are available, and then you transport to the load centers, or you situate your generation companies where the load centers are, and then you pipe or you bring the primary sources of energy to those places. Usually it's, in Nigeria we have, in the Niger Delta region, in the southern part of the country, the gas, oil, and so on and so forth. In the past, in Ibadan, for instance, they used to generate oil through oil, you know. The cost of doing pipelines is almost like 3,500 more expensive than building transmission lines. So we need to concentrate on the new vision of the new TCN under my friend. Today we have a willing capacity of 7,000. What has NIPP done? We have, working in concert with TCN, been able to do 1,635 kilometers of 330 kV double circuit lines, 720 kilometers of 132 kV double circuit lines, 10 new 330 kV substations, 7 new 132 kV substations, 6,150 MV of 330, 132 transformer capacity, 2,800 MV of 132, 33 transformer capacity. And we have also expanded existing TCN substations, 36 of them at 330 and 132. But we still need to do more, and that's why we have no option but to work with and support the laudable efforts of TCN. There's a need to quickly increase the wheeling capacity in Nigeria, and we have to adopt several methods, some of which include changing the conductors, you know, because of the problems we have with way leave issues, which for those of us who are involved in transmission is a big problem. We need to increase that capacity. We need to be able to increase the transformation capacity that we presently have by doubling the size of our transformers from 150 MVA to 300 MVA, which has started. and the 60 MVAs. In the past, I think we had 30 MVAs, we had 40 MVAs. Now we're using mostly 60 MVAs, but we have started stepping them up to 100 MVAs now. Now, what is the future calling for? All over the world now, you will see in China, in some of those developed economies, that they are going as high as 800 MVA on transmission lines. So we need to get to that stage now, because the losses that you encounter using the 330 kVA will be reduced. And then we need to reduce the fault levels on our transmission line so that all of the problems that we had in recent times of collapse in the system can be eliminated. So I think when I begin to talk, we'll talk about how we're going to achieve this. I think I have dealt principally with some of the issues I would like to discuss here. But principally, I also would like to mention the issue of vandalization. And I hammer on this all of the time. Our country, unfortunately, is one of the few countries in the world where people deliberately destroy their own facilities, infrastructures, be it roads, be it bridges, be it railings on bridges, street lights, traffic lights, and you'll be surprised, even at 330 kV towers, people dig under them. I can't understand it. And you don't want to know how much it costs us to repair, to replace, and then the waiting time. Because even those towers you see in the bushes, they are not ready-made. You don't just go to the market and calculations have to be done, and the factories that produce these things have to concentrate on a particular line of production at every time. So you can imagine the horror of people going to an area, excavating sand from under a 330 kVA transmission line tower and then destroying everything. And then the next thing is that people will shout NEPA, or that, you know, these are man-made problems that I think we can easily tackle if the people are made to own these infrastructures. If they know that when you begin to drag us back, we cannot make progress in our country. Thank you very much.
So let me start with, we know where we are as a country, and I'm Nigerian, with about 4,000 megawatts in the grid on an average day for a population of 180 million people. We know the power sector is not where it needs to be. And if we need to take the grid to where it needs to be to serve the people of Nigeria, it requires a lot of things. It will require a confluence of new business models, new stakeholders. In my view, it would also require that we pay special attention to different elements of the grid to get it to where it needs to be. The generation side needs to be looked at, the distribution needs to be resilient, and the transmission that connects the two ends needs to be taken seriously. We do see in the past that generation receive a lot of attention. You have a lot of developers in the country, and I think some of them might be in the room. You see a lot of activities and noise coming from the distribution sector, and it seems like the transmission in the middle is neglected, more or less. People are not paying sufficient attention to the transmission side. So, where were we in the past? I want to start by stating clearly that, in my opinion, I don't think ownership or vertical integration was the problem in the power sector, right? There were underlying problems that people think, okay, it's because it's owned by the government or it's because it's vertically integrated, and those are the problem. My personal view is that that may not be the problem, in my view. I think the challenge, in my view, is that, like I think my predecessor said, lack of planning, no proper oversight, lack of funding, neglect in general. So the grid could actually be owned by the public sector and be maintained properly. If there's money, if there's discipline, if the staff are trained and everybody is qualified as governance, it can be done. And there are places in the world where it is done and it is done well. So I don't want to say the private sector is the solution to everything. I come from the private sector. We do business with the private sector. But the private sector is not the answer to everything. We need to go into identifying the problem and then checking if the private sector is the solution. So if money is the problem, in a fiscally constrained environment like Nigeria, where the government is facing so many social issues that needs to be funded, then maybe we need to think about how we find funding. In that case, maybe the private sector might be the solution. If we think that we have a country where for every institution we have to have quota system to get people to work in a certain department. It is the public sector, it has to be done that way. So the problem is, maybe we need to find a different model for staffing, for equipping, for building capacity to run what we need to run and run them efficiently. So I don't want to paint a very broad brush and say, public sector created a problem in the sector. I mean, there were issues that we need to go into the details to identify and then find the right solutions to how we do that. So, how did we try to fix the problem in Nigeria? We had the plan to unbundle, to commercialize, and then to privatize. So for the transmission segment, we did unbundle, we did commercialize. Of course, there was no plan to privatize. For generation, we unbundled, we didn't commercialize, we privatized. For distribution, we unbundled, we didn't commercialize, we privatized. And we have problems all over. If you're going to unbundle and you don't have money, you need to think about how you're going to commercialize, how you're going to get the proper money into the sector. So what we see is that we have a situation in the TCN that only the first part, the unbundling part was handled. There was no commercialization. So you don't have enough fund coming in. And the TCN continue to rely on public funding. Of course, there's a bunch of money identified for TCN, which I think the team is working on. So where are we today? I think the current situation, is well covered by my co-panelist, who is also a friend and a brother, and we have similar background. So I will say that where we are looking from afar, you have a steady management in place. They're driving the best they could. They're moving things in the right direction. But if we don't ensure that we have willing charges, because whatever money we get today, we'll spend the money, there will be need for money tomorrow. How do we make it sustainable in the long run? We need to think about how we get the willing charges for transmission to be such that it could replace the investment we're making today. That's something I think we need to think about. The other thing is, in my view, when you unbundle, you lose the coordination of an integrated system. And the problem we see today is that many of us will go to our villages, we want to build power plants in our villages. We buy land, we do environmental impact assessment, and then after 6 months of running around, we show up in UG's office asking to be connected. The problem with that is you lose the central planning because developers are running all over the place without talking to TCN first. The ideal thing would be to plan and say, this is the part the grid is supposed to grow. And these are the areas where we need generation. And the party who wants to develop can go to those areas. Otherwise, you start a project in an area and you have an upside connection of the grid. I used to be an engineer. I don't know the engineering details, but this is speaking from 33,000 feet. But I'm sure the people who are engineers on the panel can speak to this. So where do we go in the future? I think there are several options for Nigeria to consider. One is to keep transmission in public hands, fund it appropriately, and staff it properly. That's one option. That's the status quo. There could be private option, and there could be public-private options. So let me be clear, the private sector has invested in many transmission opportunities, and a lot of it is done in Latin America, and I'll go to a few examples. And on the IFC side, we finance a couple of opportunities in Latin America and in Asia. How do we do this? So if we come to TCN, I think to expand the TCN and make it resilient and make it future ready for Nigeria, one option is keep it public, fund it properly, staff it properly. Another option could be you could privatize it. That's one option. But remember, if you're privatizing a natural monopoly, you need to think about the regulatory implication, because this asset are natural monopoly. You're not going to run 5 transmission lines serving the same people. So you can bring in competition. You can bring in competition at the input, not when you're operating. Another option is you could keep the core of the network and use the private sector to expand through a model that is called the independent transmission provider. This is a model that has been used extensively in Latin America. In Brazil, for instance, the grid in Brazil, the length of grid in Brazil at about 128,000 kilometers is more than what you have on the continent of Africa put together. And the population of Brazil is just about Nigeria. Brazil is where you say you use wire to transport water, because 80% of the generation in Brazil is hydro. And they are in the Amazon, right? So you need very long transmission lines to bring electricity, okay, to the different parts of the country. And this is a model they've practiced very well. In Peru, what they did is they cut the transmission network into 2, put them in private hands, created 3 other companies, privatized them, so you have 5 transmission companies, 2 in public hands, 3 in private hands. Okay? One of the things we financed in Peru was 2 lines, just 2 lines. The government wants to build 2 lines, and it will be on an availability basis. You build the line, there's really nothing to maintain. You build the line, you agree how much is you're gonna collect. When you go to bid, you're bidding on the basis of this is how much revenue that I need. You are not operating because the grid needs to be operated as a network. So you build the line, you make it available, you ensure it's available, and you get paid on that. And it could actually be done in a very cheap manner. Competition has brought the cost of transmission down pretty well. But in many of these markets, transmission cost is passed through. So in a place like Brazil, it's about 7% of the end user tariff. It goes in there. In Peru, in most places. So we need to determine, before we can do that in Nigeria, we need to think about who is going to pay for it. Okay? And we need to be sure that we have the ability to charge to have a willing charge that would allow for the private participant to operate. So I talk about independent transmission provider, in which case you keep the core of the TCN, you use those independent to expand, and in Brazil they have over 50 independent transmission providers. Or you could go to the Peru option where you break the grid into 2 and you privatize, or you could keep this in public hands completely.
Relative to ask a couple of questions for the next couple of minutes. The interesting thing is everybody here has referred to each other as brothers, so I guess as a band of brothers, when I was in secondary school, we had a place where if you had a disagreement with someone, there's a place called Land of Settlement. Yeah. We go and check it out there, and then. So now we're going to get into the solution space. Interestingly enough, on your last point was one of my first questions to you, and I was going to start with Gigi, but let me let you finish that thought on the model for moving TCN forward. Because you've talked about the different modalities, whether it's the management contract, keeping it in government hands, because typically the criticism is because the government is running it, it's not performing as it should. But you've touched on a number of items, and I wanted you to conclude on that point in terms of what would help to strengthen TCN ownership-wise on the way it's been run.
No, thank you. I think there are 2 issues, right? One is funding, number 1. The second one is governance and oversight. we have more than sufficient number of engineers in Nigeria. So when we talk about capacity, it's not the engineers that will run it or the accountant that will do the paperwork. It's the governance. And the governance challenges we have in public sector and emerging markets. The other one is funding. So if you, whatever option you choose, you have to design the contract in such a way that those two issues are addressed. It needs to bring money in and you need to solve the governance problem. So if you have an independent transmission provider, they come in a bid, you identify the line, so the MD will say, these are the areas where I want to extend my lines to. And you put them in lots, and you bring parties in and say, how much will you take to build this and run it for 30 years? How much will I pay you on an annual basis? And whoever gives you, whoever is qualified technically and gives you the lowest price, you give it to the person to build. And the only thing is, once it's built, they keep it clean and cut the grass and maintain it, and his engineers or the market operator and the system operator will run it. So that solves the money problem and solves the governance problem for that segment. And if you have many of those, then you actually solve the problem. The government can then deal with the core. That is if the government doesn't want to privatize the core.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to come back to you, Yuji, in terms of, you ended your talk saying you're not the weakest link. But I know that in the sector, and for those who are in the sector, maybe not outside of the sector, have always thought about TCN being the weakest link because there's a tendency to think that either power is not getting to where it should get to, even when we have an installed capacity of 12,000 megawatts. Of course, we're not generating that much. In light of these generation companies that are out there expanding capacity, you have the solar companies that are also in the process of negotiation with embeds and the like. What are your thoughts, or what are the plans being made to expand the grid to get ahead of generation?
Thank you very much. You know, if you listen to my friend, he talked about the private sector coming. To be honest with you, there are a lot of private sector interests in transmission. There are so many private sectors that want to participate in building transmission, either in terms of build, own, operate and transfer, or contractor finance, or whatever. And up to now, it has not been approved. So if you want to bring private sector, how would the private sector operate? Because they have to get their money from the wheeling charges. And the wheeling charges is coming from the market fund. And if the market fund is only 40%, how do they get their payment and get their return on investment? So this is the challenge that we were faced with when we came in. In as much as we try to push the NAC to see that we get even 100% of the current charges that we are doing, which is very low. We also look at, but we need to do something, and that is the reason why we convinced the minister that he has to allow us to go to multilateral donors to raise money. And that is why we are able to raise $1.97 billion so far to expand the grid to at least 20,000 megawatts. And we have also made our staff, TCN, to know that they also have certain capacity to do. And that is why from July to December, TCN staff has installed more than 12 transformers all over the country. They installed by themselves, not contractors, they installed by themselves. And as we speak with you, we are building a substation, TCN staff are building. Now, what did we do? When we went to the multilateral donors, we got about 5 multilateral donors that show interest in us. World Bank came in with $486 million, and the $486 million is putting redundancy capacity all over the country. What does that mean? They are only funding brownfield project, meaning existing transmission substation is what that project is financing. And I can give example of some of the expansion that we're doing. And we also agree with them that we're going to do advanced procurement. And that is why even the loan has not been signed, we have already done 50% of the procurement of those projects.
So I was going to get to that point of, because probably over the past 3 years, we've heard from TCN, it doesn't matter what, which of the management team has been in there, but we've heard from TCN monies that have been allocated from multilaterals and bilaterals. And it reminds me of the famous movie where they said, show me the money. So it seems the money has been committed, but there are certain CPs that TCN need to meet up with in order to access those funds. So why they have been available over the past 3 years or 3-4 years, access to the fund has been a challenge. So the question is, what is it that is preventing TCN from being able to access those funds or to meet those CPs?
You know, since 2001, what I've been doing in my life is project management. And I've also been in African Development where I worked for 9 years. What we do is to give loan to countries to see how they can build their infrastructure. So that's how, you know, I told you when we approaching multilateral donors, they gave us some of the problems that is bedeviling TCN, why TCN is not doing well, and we have to put in place a structure that makes them comfortable. For information, Oga Osagwe is here, I can confirm. There was no time that TCN, even former PACN, has attracted more than $300 million in 1 year from any multilateral donor. So it's not surprising that we are attracting $1.57 billion this time around. It's because we are putting a structure that is comfortable with them. And for information, when we came in February, TCN has never submitted a single audit. Multilateral donor will not give you money when you don't do audit. As the MD of TCN, Hirochi is here, he can tell you. We have slept in the office how many times to ensure that we deliver the audit. We had to deliver the audit that was not delivered several years for us to be able to access all those money. And as I told you, we are putting structure that if you look at the Nextier project, which was implemented for 8 years and it has not seen line of day. I can tell you all the transformers have been commissioned between now and March 31st. In Abuja now, we are commissioning 100 MBA in Katambi. In the next 2 weeks, we are commissioning another 100 MBA in Abo in the next 2 weeks. We have already commissioned 2x60 MBA in Suleja about 2 weeks ago. We have commissioned 1x60 MBA in so this is where we are working. It's unlike before, we are working, and for information also, there's no lack of capacity in TCN. TCN engineers are some of the best engineers you can see. It's leadership. Me, I'm not an engineer. Just give them chance for them to shine. This project that I'm telling you, the project from multilateral donor, $1.57 billion. All of them have been prepared by TCN engineers. They did the scoping, they did the feasibility study, which include environmental impact, as environmental analysis, social analysis, even economic analysis for information. They did it by themselves. No single consultant. So this is the way we're going. So it's not like before when we implement project anytime, anyhow. No, we have to be, and those people who are implementing project now, they are selected through competitive selection means. We advertise for the position, they apply. For the project manager, they had to write exam, they wrote test, and they passed the test. And you know what? They signed performance bond. Any of them that didn't perform will be removed. He can be part of TCN staff, but he cannot be implementing project.
Okay,
So that is how it is.
I'm sure we'll at some point during the audience participation, I'm sure Sonny Roche will have a question or two in that regard. So let me shift gears a little bit. I'm going to address the question to Mr. Ifeolu, but sort of touching on something Femi said earlier, and this is in the way the grid is structured. And I wonder whether regionalization of the grid, this is on, with respect to stability, whether regionalization of the grid will promote stability. Because he's talked about it from the angle of being able to expand within limited resources and also bringing in the private sector. But in terms of regionalizing the grid, because we've heard that bandied around, do you think that it will promote stability, and do you know of places where that has worked in the past?
Thank you. First, I think we need to understand that this country don't have the kind of money that all of us assume that we have. If you know how much we earn as revenue as a nation, and the enormous problems that we have in terms of lack of infrastructure, government has to continuously balance these things. And now we have a very wide landmass. Regionalization is good because it gets power to the people fast, but you cannot neglect certain part of the country as well. So there has to be a balance when you talk about regionalization. And what I think we should be looking at is first how to get out of where we are at the moment. We need to get out of here as fast as possible. I spoke about increasing the transmission capacity from 330 kV to 750 kV. I spoke about changing the conductors, to use high capacity conductors, and I also spoke about increasing the capacity of the transformers and transformation capacities. I also spoke about it's possible, for instance, instead of using double circuit lines, to use quad and even more, multi-circuit lines. Incidentally, NDPH is building Nigeria's first multi-circuit line, though very short, but yes, we're doing it because in Okearo, no, it's not Okearo, it's Okearo, Alausa, we've had stranded capacity there, and we're now trying to build a multi-circuit line to bridge that. But the cost of compensation, it's enormous because that's a built-up area. So in looking at that as well, we have to take that into consideration, and that's why the option of using higher capacity conductors, using quad multi-circuit lines is a better option.
You touched on, you touched on stranded power. Sorry, I just wanted to, pardon the interjection, but you touched on stranded power. And I know with the NIPP project, and I'm not sure which specific plants now, you have plants that apparently are ready to go. Of course, some for lack of gas, but some might be transmission, not being able to move that power out. So what are the plans in terms of building other more transmission line? I know at the end of the day, we seem to always come back to the lack of funding on some level. But you touched on lack of planning. So again, there has to be plans in place so that when the money comes in, then that plan can align with the funding available.
And then NDPH is an intervention agency. So we really have to align our plans with TCN. That's clear. Originally, we were supposed to build power stations, but because when we build these power stations, to wheel the energy generated there was a problem. To even get energy to run those power stations, so we've gone into other functions that we were not originally supposed to be doing. For instance, we built gas measuring stations, gas receiving stations, right? Even pipelines, we conducted pipelines. And so in a couple of places, Benin, Agbo, all of those places, we already have studies, we already have designs, we already have plans. And because we're not funded as we used to be, to be funded now, we have to make do with what we generate from the power plant. I'm happy that UG says they are collecting 34%. We only
40%.
40%, no, less than 40%. The highest I think we've collected any month is 24% of what we generate.
Okay,
so you see the problem, and it is this that we're using to fund all of our activities. We're building more transmission stations. We have all the plans, and each time we discover something, we work with TCN to plan ahead. But we are not going to be caught unawares. We are not going to stumble. If money is available, or as soon as, even now that we don't have a lot of money, we manage what we have to improve on and to ensure that our generated capacity is not stranded. Sure. In actual fact, what we have in Okearo is not allows our corridor. It's not even part of. It's not what we generate. It's just what we have identified, and all across the country like that. For instance, we are building a 330, 132, 33 kV substation in Lafia, in Nasarawa State. That is the place where the government and virtually all the functions used to run 24/7 on very limited power supply, and they have installed candles all over the places. What is best known? But with that now, it's affecting what TCN is able to do around that area, you know, and that's a major leap forward.
The transmission sector system collapses, and apparently in January this month there have been 6 already. If I'm right, I know earlier you talked about allocating spinning reserves. So the question I have is, what are the things that TCN needs to put in place in order to do a proper allocation of spinning reserves, and also to reduce incidences of system collapse? I know you've talked in the past about what might be the sources of these collapses, but could you elaborate on that and also what the plans are?
Yeah, I mentioned to you that there are certain things that need to be put in place for us to have grid stability. One of the things is that we need to put in investment. One of the key investments that we discovered that we need to do very quickly is that we need to build another very big line between Benin and the Lagos and Omotosho. And that is why very soon you will see advert from us. We are going to do the first, what we call contractor finance project in TCN, and actually it's a way of testing how we're going to use the private sector going forward. And that is, we are going to build a cord line between Benin TS and Benin North and Omotosho. Already we have directed the contractor that is doing Omotosho to Irukun. They are changing the conductor to GAP, which will carry more than twice the capacity of the Bison wire that we use. So when we do that, we think that we'll be able to stabilize the grid, because 70% of the instability we find is between Lagos and Benin, because of the so many generation stations that are around that side. But also, we have also made case for NAC, because you see, with the generation capacity of 5,000, I mean, the peak 5,000, because it's not, the generation capacity is about 7,000. But, you know, transmission, I mean, the power is a function of connected load and the generated load. We were just the wire between the connected load and generated load.
Sure.
Like the transformer, I mean, the generator in your house. If you have a generator of 20 kVA, and you have the wire, which is the transmission, which can carry 20 kVA,
Sure.
and the load inside the house is only 5 kVA. If you own your generator, it will only generate 5 kVA. It can't generate 20 kVA. So that is how the system is. So if the distribution network cannot take more than that, that is what you will be able to generate. I mean, you will be able to generate. So what we did on the free spinning reserve, because with 5,000 generation capacity, the spinning reserve in General Ogasagwe can tell you is about 10%. So you should have been 500. But what do we get? If you see our daily broadcast now, you see either 40 or 0. 40 or 0.
And why is that?
Why is it 40 or 0? Because it's supposed to be 500. Why is it 40 or 0? It means that if there's any instability that is more than 40, it can actually bring the grid if it is 40. So, in fact, one of the reasons why we are having some instability now is because of the frequency control that we're able to achieve. If not, every small thing can bring down the grid. So we have discussed with the generators that are supposed to give us a spinning reserve, because we have contract with them, but they don't provide it. Madam is here. And they tell us the reason why they don't provide it is because the tariff is too low for the spinning reserve. So there's no incentive for them to provide. So we set up a committee under the system operator, the independent system operator, with the representative of the generators, to come up with what is the tariff that can incentivize them to allow us to have the spinning reserve. And we've submitted to NAC, but up to now we have not got approval. So this is where we are. So we cannot force them, since what we are paying them is not good enough. But we are making effort and talking to NAC to see the reason why they need to approve the spinning reserve tariff, so that we can have the adequate reserve. But you see, stabilizing the grid is a function of investment, and that is why we are working hard to put all the investment we need, including the SCADA. For information, the SCADA scoping consultancy has just submitted its report. We are going to organize a big workshop on that report, because we don't want to make the same mistake that we have made in the past.
Okay.
And all the investment we are doing also, we are doing it to support the problem we have with the SCADA, because we have also found out what is the reason why twice attempts at doing SCADA were not successful. And we have found the reason. So every investment we are putting that investment not to only expand the grid, but to also ensure that we are going to have a functional scatter. So this is what we are doing.
Okay. In your response, you just concluded response, you mentioned contractor financing. And in the past, I know that contractors have approached both TCN and the Ministry of Power and offered different types of, or made different types of offer. But a number of times they are contingent on the government providing a guarantee. And I wonder, again, it comes back to this, should I say, lack of planning or lack of coordination that we sometimes see in the sector.
I don't think it's going to work. We want to demonstrate whether TCN can do that kind of thing, and that's what we want to do. And we're going to advertise it. We don't want to do under the table type of arrangement. It's going to be something that is going to be advertised, competitive, transparent. We don't want to do something under the table. But we don't want to rely on government. We want to test how TCN can do this by itself.
Okay. And I'll just do one last question before I throw it out to the audience, because I know everyone is eager to ask, at least many people are eager to ask a question. And I'll ask Mr. Oedele, when it comes to the grid code, is the grid code being followed? Is it being adhered to in the way it should be? Does it work? Is it something that should be changed?
Well,
given current conditions?
Yes, it works. It's been adhered to, and I'm sure that you had the MD of TCN talk about these things when he made his opening presentation. But of course, these things are dynamic, and that's why he talked about increasing the level, from 49.7, I guess, to 50.2. I thought so. They're dynamic. I mean, studies are regularly being conducted, and any aspect of the grid code that we object to is brought onto the plate and it's looked at. So I don't think there's a problem with the grid code. I mean, we've had arguments, we resolve it, and what concerns all of us is the stability of this. Vandalization,
sure.
I mean, those are real life things, and I talked about it. I talked about having the people of Nigeria own these facilities. It belongs to us.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we're going to take 45 questions at a time for the panelists so they can answer them, and then we reach out for more questions.
Government says your tariff cannot be cost reflective. Isn't it what Nextier? And they say to Discourse that your capex is going to be 250 million for 5 years. I know that some Discourse need more than that to meter. If you cannot meter and they are stealing your power, how can you have money to run the system? It's not going to work. There is no Nigerian way of doing anything. Let us sit down, coordinate the sector properly, and make sure that our tariff is cost reflective. You cannot ask TCN to be expanding. My MD said we want to do 20,000 megawatts, whereas NEP tariff calculates the volume of what you carry, not your capacity. It's like building a 25-story building, and they say can only let out 25 flats, you can only let out 5 flats. Then you have to maintain. It doesn't make sense. If your tariff says we recognize the volume of power you carry, not your capacity, why would I waste money, borrow money, pay interest to have a limited capacity?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to actually commend the organizers for this. My name is Victor Fodeke, Director General of Africa Clean Energy Summit. I will ask my friend Luigi to kindly tell us what special skill do you have with only 24% of what you have as what is a return on what you do to generate, to actually transmit this message. What special skill, miracle, or magic that you have? Please tell us. Thank you.
Jacob, Dr. Sado Jacob from Federal University of Technology, Electrical Engineering Department. I have been following keenly our discussion, but over the years, I've discovered that our major problem is human factor. And until, as a nation, we make up our mind to do the right thing, we will not get anywhere. We keep on blaming one another for. I mean, we organize conferences. After the end of the conferences, we go back to square one. So we must be ready as a people from this same country that want to move forward. Then we tell ourselves the truth, then we move forward. without that, have all the best plans in the world, it won't work. It's the human factor, and we must be ready to move forward. Without that, we'll still go back to square one. Well, of course, we have talked about the regulation. How on earth is it said that I am the middleman between generation and transmission, and distribution, and I don't have the audacity to collect the transmission bill? It's not possible. Electricity is unique in nature. It's a commodity that is unique. With that connection, you can't get it anywhere. And if that is the truth, then we should be able to monitor it very well. If I am generating, the amount of megawatt I'm generating is quantifiable, is measurable. And if that is true, then of course, as a transmission man, I am buying from the generator. I know what I'm buying from them. And if a distribution man is buying from me from transmission, it's measurable. So I think the government must be real. We are not real to ourselves. And that's why this problem is persisting.
Thank you very much.
I'm Engineer G.O.P. Osako. When I saw this program, I saw past. I thought it was necessary to come and remind everybody about the past. I was not ancient, please. I was actually the first CEO of TCM when it was formed. And some of the facts he raised about the work we did with World Bank, the plan, structure, how the TCM will be. I'm happy, he identified it as one of the starting points. My own worry is that where we are now is not where we should be. There's always transition. We have done a bit, may not have done it to the best of our, ability because of funding. But I can tell you now, he needs our help. Our problem in Nigeria is that as soon as people leave, the tendency is, throw back and back water away. And in the process, you may repeat the same mistake we made in the earlier days. So I would feel that this forum, I think, is very good. It makes it possible for us to come and air our views. But I also request that TCM management, NDPAC should have a forum where they call people who have functioned in those capacities to come and rub minds. That's what they did in India. That's what they did in Malaysia. But in our own case, that forum is never there. So you see new people working, struggling, and some of the areas will have helped them to say, don't go here, don't go there, do it this way, because they never get, that advantage. But my own point is that, dialogues like this are very necessary.
I won't punch this with us. Mine is questions. I have questions for the CEO TCM. I have like 3 questions. The first one.
Make it 2, please.
Thank you. 159 containers still at the ports. What are you doing to clear them? And how soon are you getting them cleared? Secondly, you tried explaining why the grid collapses. We had like 6 of them in January. You're stabilizing the grid. True. I've been covering the sector. Yes, you're doing that. But we've had 6 grid collapses in January. Would you mind talking about that? Finally, please. Have you started assessing the $1.57 billion? Have you actually started assessing it? Because there's been back and forth about this thing. Have you started assessing it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think let me start with the first one.
Sure.
I think the first one is coming from Victor. If I'm right, he said, what can you do? Say, I think it's the DG of Energy Summit, he said that what can you do 20%? What special skill do I have? I think that's what I said. He said, if I'm mistaken. But if you are talking about skill, one of my skills is that I'm a very difficult person. I'm a very, very difficult person. And why do I say I'm a very difficult person? I'm somebody who cannot push me to do the wrong thing, wherever you are. And when I came in day one, I'm not afraid of being removed. If you want to remove me today, it's not a problem. But nobody would make me to do wrong thing. And when the president of African Development Bank came to Nigeria, I think 3 people met him And they told him, remove this man and take him back to Ivory because he's giving problem to us. And what he told them, he said, we know you will give problem, that's why we allow him. So that is the skill that I have. So, because I'm a difficult person, yes, you can carry me to National Assembly every time and put me in a box, but you cannot force me to do what you think you want me to do. That is the only skill that I have. And I've also worked in the sector for several years, so I have the experience. I know the people, I know who are the good people, I know who are the difficult, who are the people that I can avoid. That's why we're able to do what we're doing. And that's why with less than 40%, some of the things that we can do with contractors, we can actually do it in-house. And through in-house capacity, I can tell you, the transformers that we spend a lot of money to do them, we are doing them at the rate of about 10% of what we normally pay contractors before in the past. So you see the kind of thing that we are doing to achieve results. Meaning we are using our in-house capacity to achieve some of those things. But to be honest with you, I've told you the management of the grid is not an easy thing. And let me tell you, if I had known that the problem would be as that big, I would not have run into the problem. So don't think that it's a rosy work that anybody would want to do. It's a very, very difficult work. But since we are here, and we believe also, it's only Nigerians that can solve problems of Nigeria. You know, most Nigerians, we believe that somebody somewhere will come and solve our problem. And that is why we have this problem. And I think what I will urge you here is that some of us, we should start visiting countries like Niger, like Burkina Faso, like Cotonou, like Cameroon. We should start visiting. Most Nigerians don't visit these places. Where we visit is only England, London, America, all those places that are already developed. And that's why we don't appreciate what we are. The way we are somewhere, but we don't appreciate it. We only look at those people that are developed. So this is a big problem. We need to appreciate what we are. As bad as we are better than some people. Now, the thinking that...
My interpretation, sorry, one house. My interpretation of the problem.
Look, let me conclude. I'm not condemning us. I'm not saying we are where we're supposed to be. We are not where we're supposed to be. But the reality of the matter is that if we see if we go to those people, we'll appreciate the need for us to be patriotic. Patriotism is a big problem here. If you go to those places, they don't have resources, they don't have anything. But they are very patriotic about their country. But here, patriotism is a big problem. Everybody wants to grab for himself. Nobody wants to grab for the nation. That is a big problem. But if you stand still, look, I'm not looking for a job. I'm still a staff of African Development, isn't it? I can walk out tomorrow and go to African Development. But by working in TCN, I'm making sacrifice. But we have to make sacrifice for this nation for us to move forward. That is what I'm trying to say. And I'm trying to say that we should be more patriotic to this nation. That's what I'm saying. There's another question on the issue by Jacob, that human factor has been a problem, and we have so many conferences and this. I agree with you completely. When I was coming to TCN, I have a project. You know, the president approved my coming on the 19th of August. I didn't come until February. Within this period, I have a project on TCN on how to work on TCN. But little did I know that the problem outside is more than the problem inside. And it is the human factor. That is the problem. The problem outside TCN that will disturb you, distract you from managing the grid is far higher than the problem of TCN, the problem of the staff and the rest of them. And that is the human factor. And until we have a general consensus on power, 5,000 megawatts for 182 million people, does it make sense? No. So we have to have a non-partisan consensus on how to move forward. So that if we have a non-partisan consensus, it means that we'll have a plan that will be sustainable, that will not be truncated. Just like if you look at Iran, they have their plan on nuclear. Every government that comes, they are doing nuclear. We have to have a non-partisan consensus on how to solve problem of electricity in Nigeria. And that has to be done. If we don't solve problem of electricity, there is no way we develop. If you look at development and power consumption are directly related. Where there is high level of poverty, go and check, they don't consume electricity. Israel, with a population of 8 million, they are generating 10,000 megawatts, over 10,000. Nigeria, with a population of 182 million, we are generating 5,000, or we are putting on the grid 5,000. It doesn't make sense. And Nigeria development and whatever we want to be will only depend on our capacity to expand electricity and stabilize our electricity. So I agree with you, human factor is a problem, but human factor will only be solved if we build consensus on the fact that we want to move forward. That's the only way we can solve the problem of human factor. Then there is where are we, and where are the okay, the issue of container, yes. The issue of container. These containers are not containers that are created. For information, since I came, there is no container that came to TCS that has not been cleared from the time I came to now. So these are not containers that I created them. They are all actually stranded containers. Some of the containers have actually been auctioned. We have to go to the people who auction them and buy them back. So it's not something that you are saying, it's not something that is very easy. It's very, very difficult. Yes, very, very difficult. But what I want to tell you is that we have a plan to completely evacuate them completely. Even among the 159, I think about 45 of them, they are on the process of being removed. So it is 112 that is meaning that we have 112, 113. That is meaning that we have not completed the negotiation. So we are working to remove all of them. We can't leave them there. And we have organized the expedited department in such a way that we cannot have this kind of thing again. Even our contract system, we have changed the contract in such a way that every tender that we are doing, it is the responsibility of the contractors to remove the goods from the port. And also, if we don't give you IDEC, you cannot ship. So this is where we have structured our contract in such a way so that we don't have stranded container again going forward. Then again, there was this issue of from Oga Asagbe. Oga is the issue that we need to discuss with the previous people. Of course, we actually agree with you that we're going to organize a meeting. And Mrs. Mba is here. Where is Mrs. Mba? I told Mrs. Mba we are organizing the meeting. Certainly, sir. We came around the 2nd of January. We have this gas pipeline mechanism between Lagos and Benin. And then half our generation are out. So we started having grid instability until that gas pipeline was restored. We have no rest of mind. So you know, grid is like a baby. If you are the MD of TCN, you are one of them, so you know it. Immediately the grid is out, you don't have rest of mind until it is restored. And even when it is restored, you have to go for post-mortem to find out what is the reason why the grid was out. So this is the problem. But one thing that I also want to tell you is that when I came in newly, we had several system collapse. We didn't know what caused the system collapse. But now there is no single grid instability that we don't know the reason why it happened. So this is different from what, so we are making progress. And I believe that with some of the investment that we were putting, plus the speedy result we are expected to get, we will reach the level where we want. For information, the frequency control that we have achieved is even appreciated by people who are outside Nigeria. West African Power Pool has agreed for the first time to synchronize the energy between Nigeria and the rest of West Africa. So you know, before we highlighted, all the energy that leaves Nigeria to Benin and Togo does not mix with the energy that comes from Ghana and the rest of West Africa. But now we are synchronizing because they appreciate the fact that we are putting frequency control and the grid has stabilized to some extent. So we'll go further to stabilize the grid by going for the 49.75 and 50.25. But we need the cooperation of Joy and our colleagues because it's necessary for us to put in that structure so that we can be able to stabilize the grid more. This is the view. Now the next one is the issue of
I think that was the last one.
punch. I think I've talked about the container.
Yes.
Now there was the issue of whether we have started accessing our multilateral donor fund. You know, I told you this is the work I've done for 9 years before I come to TCN. And before when I was in TCN, I was also at a point in time financial controller of the World Bank project. I was the first person that started the report-based disbursement in Africa, not report-based disbursement. And I started here in Nigeria. So I understand this issue of donor financing very well. The problem is that it takes about 1 year minimum to prepare a multilateral donor-funded project. And it takes about 1 year for you to do the procurement. This is every donor project. That is how it is. So when the donors gave us condition that we need to solve some of the institutional problems that we have that has been militating against TCN implementing project in the past, we also came to the donors and we told them that we also have issue with them. And one of the issues we have with them is that it takes a long time to do the procurement process. And we believe that the procurement process and some of the preparation can go together. And that is why for the first time, the multilateral donors, all of them, they agree that we can go for advanced procurement. That is why if you look at the World Bank component, we did the advert for Lagos and North Central and Northwest. Even when we have not even done the negotiation, we did the advert. So we started the procurement process even when we have not concluded. So this is part of the advanced procurement to shorten the lifespan of the implementation of the project. So this is what we are doing. So for the first component of the $486 million, the negotiation has taken place. We have concluded it. The board approval of the World Bank will be first week of February, and after that, the loan is going to be declared effective. So that's how it is. The one of 170 million of Abuja Willing project is already signed. So we are actually at the final stage of the tender for the Abuja Willing project that is putting 5 additional substations in Abuja and is bringing a new supply route through life here to Abuja.
This is the AFD loan.
The AFD loan. So that's what we are at the final stage of the implementation. The Northern Corridor, which is building a new transmission line from bringing Kebbi to Sokoto, and also is rebuilding, constructing from Shiroro to Kaduna, is putting a port line. That one is also, we have finished the feasibility studies, we have submitted to AFD, they've brought it to us with some comment, we are trying to put in the comment and we send to them, then we'll go for the advanced procurement. The one of Islamic Development Bank that is putting 3 port lines in Nigeria. 3 port lines in Nigeria. One is between Alauji and Onitsha, one Delta and Benin, and Kaduna and Kano. That one we have also finished the feasibility study, we have submitted to them. We are waiting for their comment, and once we finish the comment, we'll go for advanced procurement. Then this is how we are going. The one of Jaika between Ogun and Lagos, we are doing the design now. We are at the stage of design. We have finished the environmental impact assessment. We are concluding the RAP before the end of this month. So it's also moving. So this is how we are done. But there's something novel that I also want to tell you. We are not only working to look for money where we can get things without payment of money. We are also going forward. And that's why we are entering into collaboration with several other agencies. Between AGIP and us, we have entered into collaboration. And AGIP is putting a brand new GIS, Geographical Information System for TCN, at their own cost. And the 2 lakes inside River Niger, which we had issue with, we did the tender, Adeomi is here, we did the tender, it turned out to be about 1 billion. We said it's too costly, we have got AGIP, they are going to fix it. But also, government of Japan, we are working with them to see how we strengthen the transmission system. And how are we working with the government of Japan? If any of you know, Japan has reached an advanced stage. If you look at every tender that they are doing here, hardly you see Japan company win. They don't win. Because their price is very high, because they've gone to the highest advance that you can think of. It's not easy for them to win. So they normally support their companies so that the companies will continue to provide jobs for their people. So we enter into collaboration with them. Under that collaboration, we are reconstructing the Apapa GIS program, the Apapa GIS. We are reconstructing and we are upgrading it from 90 megawatt to 160 megawatt. We are reconstructing and rehabilitating Akamba. We have also signed with them, we start Isolo and Yojo, and we are going to do Ikeja West. So this is going to be grand. Under that grant also, we are putting Capacitor Bank in Abuja and Kefi. The Capacitor Bank in Abuja and Kefi is almost 90% completed, sir. So this is where we are going.
A lot of work is being done.
Yeah.
So part of what we're discussing too is the future as well. And I know, I'll get to you. Let me just interject one question that I received. I've seen some hands at the back. Talking about the future, we've been hearing in the press for the past, I think, year and a half or so that talking about renewable energy now, a lot of the solar projects have signed PPAs with MBET, and now a number of them, I'm not sure how many, are also in discussions with TCN for the grid connection agreement and other ancillary agreements. Apparently, only about 2 may have signed their GCAs, and others are complaining that they've not been able to get through on their GCA discussion. The question was whether the question being asked or being promoted was that TCN was sitting on their GCAs and don't want to have any further conversation. Could you clarify that and what the plan is going forward?
Thank you. There are two things that are causing that problem. One of the problems we have is that, most of these solar companies, they are connecting to our grid, but they will have some spark that they need to build to come to the transmission line. And this is the negotiation that took place a long time ago. But what is happening is that Embed wrote them and told them that they cannot, they are not going to build transmission, and they are not going to allow transmission to be part of the PPA. So if they are not going to allow transmission, how do we finance that spark? Donor-funded project is a project, is a good money, but it's not flexible. It's not something you can shift to do this one or this. No, it has to be financed. You have to finance what you agree. And that is why they always say the money has to be used for the purpose intended, with due regard to economy and efficiency. So you cannot talk the money and say you want to do solar connection. So, and this letter just came recently. So what we did now is that we wrote to the permanent secretary and told him to convene a meeting of NAC and us. Let's discuss how we're going to solve this problem. Is it with the less than 40% that we're getting that we're going to finance the transmission line? Because any money that enters into any infrastructure, somebody has to pay for it. You understand? So if they put their money, they have to pay for it. That is the main problem. But there's also another problem that we have. And this is the few cases where we have this one. We have areas where we don't even have the capacity transmission to wheel all of those places. And I can give you a clear example of this is between Katsina and Kano. The two lines that radiated Oganos, the two lines that radiated from Kano to Katsina, 132 lines, one of them is 100 megawatts, the other one is 80. Now the solar capacity that want to evacuate is 280. So how do we evacuate? And that is why the ED talked about the high capacity conductor. We have actually decided to procure high capacity conductor to reconductor those lines. And Katsina Kano is one of the lines that we want to reconductor principally for us to be able to evacuate the solar IPPs. But we don't want to make the mistake of Azura. When I came to TCN in February, I spent 4 months in TCN. I didn't know that we don't have evacuation plan for Azura. It was towards July that I knew about it. And I can tell you, if there's anything that has been disturbing me in TCN, it is that problem. So the problem with generation is that once they start the generation and it's about to be completed, it becomes a problem for Nigeria. So whatever you sign is going to be a problem to you, because if you don't evacuate, it means that you're going to make the country to pay for capacity that you are not using. And that becomes a political problem. So these are the, so hopefully I was with the permanent secretary yesterday on this issue of the meeting to resolve this issue. And we agree with him that we're going to meet on Thursday because the MD, one of the MD of the PPA agency is not around. So likely we're going to meet on Friday and we'll solve the problem. And then we'll sign everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd
like to ask, what is the TCN, or basically the SO, doing in terms of dispatching power plants, priority power plants? Again, we have when the dry season, where power plants like Shiboro, Kanji also need to be, might be fully dispatched, because at some point the water will dry up. The water is there, you have to manage the water. So my question to the MDTCN, and maybe if I can join in, is there an arrangement to do a priority dispatch for this power plant so that Nigeria does not incur the financial constraints for not even using the power that could have been generated?
I know that technology has proved itself to reduce costs in operations and improve efficiency. And my question is, to what extent is the power sector, in this case TCN and NDPH, utilizing technology in their operations?
I'm from the Ministry of Power. I'm surprised that the man from NDPHC was talking about vandalism, and at the rate at which he was talking, I'm shocked, because I could recall that a few years back we discussed issues relating to vandalism of the towers, and the past solution was that, one, we can deploy some the people around there to be part of the security there. And also these flying things. Drones, yeah. Drones can be deployed to help detect this thing early. It will help us. Then, secondly, on the visualization of the grid, I think it will help us a lot because one, it will help reduce losses and also stabilize the grid. So I think we should consider that.
My question goes to the NDPHT ED. You talked about that when starting a power plant, is either on load center or where the source of fuel or supply, where you can get gas. But oftentimes I've seen that, I don't know whether political pressure or what, most of the gas turbines resided, particularly for those in Oloroshogo or the one in Cross River. I don't think there are load centers, as in, or if they are also their source of supply there. What I'm saying is that you took most of those gas turbines, it took like 5 to 6 years before gas could get to the source where the gas turbine was sited. So what are the constraints that made you, I'm talking of the past now, but we're in the future, what are the constraints that made you to take that project to site in such places, such remote area, and then taking you up to 5 to 6 years before you can get gas to that particular area, and then keeping us in store for so many years? I'm saying so because I don't know the criteria for that.
Initiatives we are looking to introduce this year is to ask public officials in the power sector what their goals are. And for NDPHC, tell us what your top priority goals are for this year. What we intend to do with that information is to keep a scorecard so that as we go through the year, we can use our newsletter, which is currently received by about 100,000 people every day, to track how you're performing against those goals. And in 12 months, be able to publish your report card so we can know how we're making progress, what the challenges are, where you might need help, and how we're just essentially driving towards these end goals beyond basically holding dialogues.
One of the speakers mentioned the regionalization of the grid, and what occurred to me when this was mentioned is that you should stop digging further when you find yourself in a hole. I worked in NEPA, PACN, and I'm in TCN, and I can tell you that one of the problems that we have in the sector is that we have increased admin costs significantly at the expense of paying attention to machines. Because before, we used to have an MP in Abuja who controlled everybody. Right now, the Discourse, TCN, the power plants all have their MDs, EDs, and all that. So admin costs has increased significantly. And we're talking of the same, revenue is still about the same thing, but cost has gone up. And we're talking of admin costs. People buy cars, people buy, and this is happening in Discourse and the Gencos as well. So if you further regionalize the grid, you would have to have their finance officers, the MDs and all that, so you are creating additional problem. And then the other matter is the coordination. TCN, as it is still struggling to coordinate what's happening in the Gencos and Discos. And to get spinning reserves, you have to almost split with Gencos. I mean, who are not paid well for this because the tariff on this is poor. So if you then regionalize the grid, then you have one central person even pleading with the regional grids. So you're digging further into this hole. So, but I can tell you that in my experience, having worked with several managements of PACN, TCN, I worked with Manitoba, I can tell you that the difference now is leadership. So it's not about privatization. There's,
the transformers and installations of transformers that we used to do for 250 million, we do it now for about 18 million. And the other thing is that like the MD said, is a difficult person. Now he has and my boss, my director, Madam Tuse, is also a very difficult person. I'm a difficult person. The head of the technical team is a difficult person. So, I mean, you have to have your head on the shoulder to go to Eugene Mohammed to convince him. I mean, he talks like an engineer now. So things have changed. That's why we're able to manage with the 30% that we're getting from the market. Okay. Now, I want to say that for TCN to move forward, okay, we should stop using TCN to subsidize the sector. Its tariff should be cost reflective, okay, so that we'll be able to service all our obligations. Okay. Otherwise, we'll continue to be in trouble. So we have an MD that is not politically correct. So that's just the difference.
Thank you very much. Transmission company that would run its own network is related to a stable grid. Because right now the system, from my understanding, I'm not as technical as many of you in this room. But when you have the system we currently have, which is probably what contributes to the system collapses, when you have a failure in one segment, there's no way of rerouting power elsewhere, and so you have all this power that's stranded. So I believe the regionality issue is addressing that as opposed to separate companies. There's another point I had that has skipped my mind for now, but let me turn it back to Eugene to answer some of the questions that you raised.
Thank you very much. I think the first question. I think this issue of my brother is here. This issue of dispatching Odupani and NDPAC, particularly Odupani, because they have partial risk guarantee, was an issue that was actually had to be taken to NAC, and there was almost like a public hearing on it, and I think a verdict was declared. For information, every power that comes to the grid, somebody is guaranteed, whether it is government that is guaranteed or it is a private person that puts his money and the money has to come back. So in dispatching the grid, there is what we call merit order that is used to dispatch the grid. It's not just by offhead. And effective contract is one of the issues that you consider in merit order, effective contracting. But in merit order, you have priorities in terms of which generation is the least in terms of cost. So these are some of the things that we consider. And dispatching the grid is not something you do off it. You have to follow the grid code, and you have to also follow the merit order. So that's how it is. So we cannot come and just say, oh, dispatch only government plants because they have signed partial risk guarantee, which is guaranteed by government. It cannot work like that. Because the system operator is supposed to be neutral and is supposed to be also fair in the market. It's supposed to provide all the fairness that is needed in the market. Because if you don't provide some level of fairness, then there's going to be a problem in the market. So the dispatch of the grid is actually mainly guided by the merit order. So if you want a copy of the merit order, we can give you a copy of the merit order. Then there's this issue of that we have a lot of waste. Okay, I think somebody asked a question about to what extent are we utilizing technology in managing our operation. Of course, we have to work to utilize technology, because if a company is working between private sector, all of them, it's expected that that company have to operate certain level of efficiency. And that is why Osakwe can confirm part of the preparation that we did for TCN is that we did a lot of work. One of them is a business plan for TCN. Another one that we did was the management information system for TCN. 300 of members of staff of TCN. This is what we are starting, because if you put a computer and most of them don't have a computer, they can break the computer. Because they say everything is inside this box. So let's destroy the box so that everybody will have peace. You understand? So the first thing we are starting to do now is that we are working on increasing the literacy rate of members of TCN. But in reality, we are going towards the management information system where we can be trained by the Oracle or the SAP of this world. In all the years that I work in African Development Bank, we are using SAP. And the SAP is one of the best friendly software that anybody can talk about. But I've worked in that environment for 9 years. We have also gone ahead, even before we launched Discourse. If you read recently, we have advertised for what we call ARM. ARM is a technology also. We read our meters jointly now. But what we are moving now, we are moving for real-time online meter reading, which will be displayed, so anybody can see. We have a platform that everybody can see. Because with the declaration of eligible customer by the minister, it will require that there has to be balancing and meter reading and credibility in what we are in our measurement system. That's why we launched this project of automatic meter reading, AMR. As we speak, we have done the evaluation. We have sent to BPP and we are expecting them to give us no objection. The next question is the vandalism and this thing. I think there's vandalism. Even just recently, there was vandalism between Nsuka and New Haven. They vandalized the NDPAC line that has not been completed. So vandalism is still a problem in Nigeria. But you see, it's part of the development. But I also want to tell you that when we came to TCN, the transmission loss was 9.5%. As at December this year, we have reduced the transmission loss from 9.75% to 7.8%. So it's less than the MITO level. The MITO level is 8.05. So it's 7.8 now that we have brought it. So it's part of the work that we are doing to ensure that we stabilize and make the grid fine. Now, the prepare for that, but I'll be able to tell you something. I mean, our plan for this year is that one of the things we discovered is that in the past, most of our investment did not have a relationship between line and conductor. And I can give you an example. Between Omotosho, between Ikeja West to Ogba, we have Alimosho substation. Alimosho substation, as at now, has a capacity of 230 megawatt hour. Ogba has 240. If you add the two of them, it's 470. 470, if you multiply it by factor of 0.8, it gives you 400 megawatt, roughly about 400 megawatt. The line capacity is only 250. So that means 150 megawatt of capacity is not utilized. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if you look at between Zaria, Funtua, and Gusau, in Zaria we have 100 and for many capacities that is not utilized. So what we have agreed and we have gone ahead to do is to reconductor the lines. So what we are going next year is that if TCN engineers can build substation and they can also install transformers, I think the stringing line is easier. If I'm not lying, it will be easier. So we are going to buy them all the machines for the stringing. We'll buy them all the motors they need to restring. TCN engineers will do the restringing on those lines. And we believe that we'll reduce the cost by at least more than 50% of what we can get the contractors. And we are going to spend less than 30% of the time that the contractor will do. Between Alimosho to Ogba to Ota. And we're also picking between from New Haven to Onitsha. All those towns on the line, Nibo, which is in Oka, Oji River, and all those that are on this line, we want to reconductor that line. We also want to reconductor from Kumboso to Katsina, which, as I told you, these are one of the first lines that we need to do. Then the next thing we need to do this year is that we have to completely complete Nejib and close it. You have to complete the work. But we are not going to allow any one of them to extend to next year. And all the transformers have to be finished this year. So we are going to close this year. Then the next thing we need to do is that I've told you we are working on moving from 49.75 and 50.25, subject to the population we are going to get from Jampos. This is a priority that we want to do this year. And also getting the spinning reserve in place.
Increasing the frequency and completing the chip for me.
No, not increasing. It's the most stabilizing
the frequency, sorry. Completing the energy project and making some of those projects effective and overall relationship to reconducting. I know time is short, I was being conscious of that. Let me invite Patrick. Sorry we can't take more questions, we stay back and network. But let me invite Patrick Okimbo to give us a round of, and I've eaten into 5 minutes of his time already.
When Eugene was talking about patriotism, there was some kind of murmuring in this place, and I was taken aback. The truth of the matter is that we are not patriotic people in this country. That's the truth. People who throw wrappers of sweets, as little as that, on the road, cannot be patriotic citizens. Not to talk about vandalizing. I mean, look, just drive around Abuja and look at all the traffic lights. I mean, people go into substations, into 7.5 kVA substations, and to remove copper.
They remove arc wire.
Everywhere. I mean, this is the only country in the world that I see these things happening. And it's really very painful to some of us. And you talk about the people owning the place. Do you know that we pay people in the communities to watch over these lines? We employ NSCDC officials, we employ the military, we employ SSS, and we pay for keeping them. We provide vehicles for them, we provide equipment for them. Yet these things are being done. In Dubai, and the gold sukuk there, you don't have what do you call it? You don't have shutter rollers there. I can go on and on. And don't forget the fact that I'm also a politician, so I can talk about these issues. Sure. You know, and you wanted to know what are the goals for us? For us, we're going to commission the second unit of the Bahrain substation this year. We're going to complete the new old Abeokuta, new Abeokuta, Papalan to Akomba transmission line. We're going to complete the 330, 132, 33 kV substation in Lafia. We're going to complete the HIALA projects, all of the projects associated with that, 330, 132, and so on and so forth. For us, we're going to ensure that all our units in all the plants are available. I'm not talking about being able to dispatch, to run them, because if we don't have gas, we can't run them. If we are not dispatched, we can't do anything about them. But we'll ensure that all the units are available. We'll ensure the completion of all ongoing transmission distribution projects, like I said. In the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, we're going to be commissioning projects hitherto completed, vandalized, and not taken over by distribution companies. So we're going to complete, we're now spending a lot of money to restore those lines and test them again. Just about 2 weeks ago, we did that somewhere in Lafia, the 2x1 75 MVA substation there. We will put in place a very robust maintenance model this year that will clearly show that the cost of running our plants have gone down. My friend also spoke about increasing admin costs, and he talked about buying cars. Come on, those are very little things for people who work virtually 24/7. I flew into the country just last night. I came to Lagos because there was no flight to Abuja. I came in by first flight this morning. I didn't sleep overnight. I was working on all the emails that I had missed. So to have a Prado to come and pick me from the airport, we complain about that. Please, don't let's concentrate on the little things. Those are very insignificant. What are our mates in other countries? What do they write? Those are, look, some of us have reading, some of us have
driven better cars before we came. Some of us are sacrificing.
I think the question might be, or the comment rather might be contextual.
I just want to comment on the point about patriotism. The comment I want to make is human beings are the same everywhere in the world, from my experience. You see, it is repercussion that makes people behave in certain ways. If you put Americans here, there are no rules, no enforcement, no repercussion for behaviors. They will do exactly the same thing.
We all know that the ED came in just last night. In fact, we kept track of his movements, and when we learned that he had boarded the plane to Abuja, that was the first time we heaved a sigh of relief. So we thank you, sir, for making effort to be with us today. And for Femi, who came in all the way from DC, we thank you for also making that sacrifice to be with us here tonight. And for you, who decided to spend these 2 hours with us when you could have been anywhere else, we appreciate it. Some might think, and we've gotten this criticism from a few people, that we talk too much. There's too much talk. We need action. And I say to them, we don't talk enough. We don't talk enough. If you take a country like the United States, DC alone, Washington DC has over 1,000 think tanks. And they do this thing, each of them does this every day. And that's how come that economy works. The reason why this economy does not work is that we don't have good ideas. We have half-baked ideas. So our intent for going through the pains of putting this together every month is an effort to create a space where we can have robust discussions, and maybe 1 or 2 things will come through that we can work on. And if we do succeed in doing that, then our time here would have been well spent. And in talking about space, this is the 20th time we have run this event in this same space every month. Unfortunately, it's the last time we're going to run it in this space. So, from February, we will be relocating to Sandralia Hotel. I hope I got that pronunciation right. Sandralia Hotel in Jabi. That's going to be our new space. We'll do a lot more communication around it to ensure that people don't, out of habit, come here on the 3rd Wednesday of next month, when we hope to take a deep dive into why collections are still at the level where they are. Some might say we've beat that issue to death. I say we haven't even started. So we're going to try something else as well for next month. We're going to give everyone an opportunity to send their questions ahead of time. And the questions we're going to pose to whomever is fortunate to sit on the stage will be the questions we get from people. And on that note, just to say that I believe we still have some drinks in the back, and it would be a shame if you make a beeline out of the door when we end this event, because you would have missed the opportunity to make connections, to meet people. If you get less than 5 business cards from new people before you leave here, then you've shortchanged yourself. And on that note, I say thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you again next month.